The story begins in a dark dungeon. Floria and her father stand before a large cell. Duke Belen smirks. Bright amber eyes gleam from within the cell. It growls warily at Floria and her father. The Duke remarks, "What an enormous body. Who would have thought that this beast was actually the Crown Prince? Considered the shame of the Leo-Poland Empire. Crown Prince Cutter was born with the appearance of a beast and was ruthlessly abandoned by the Emperor, who stripped him of his position as Crown Prince. During the golden age of mankind, humans and the different races once lived peacefully together across the 6 continents. Later, humans began rejecting the other races, waged war against them, and drove them into the wastelands. The surviving races were forced to live far from humans, yet they were still captured as slaves, used as experimental subjects, and sold for high prices. The extinct beast race was one of those races. It is said that members of the beast race are born in animal form, and only a rare few possess powerful magic and can transform into humans. The Leo-Poland imperial family is renowned across the 6 continents for inheriting the bloodline of the gods. But in truth, their power comes not from divinity, but from beast race blood. Duke Belen proudly praises him, and Floria agrees from behind him. What a beautiful race. Indeed, he does not look bad at all. The beast inside begins roaring angrily in warning. Duke Belen grows somewhat impatient. He is too noisy. Put him to sleep first. You can do that, can't you? Flowers bloom around Floria as she smiles. Of course, I was the one who helped bring him here in the first place. Floria thinks. Floria Belen, the owner of the body I possessed, has flower clan blood and the ability to control floral scents. Her father instructs, by the time I return, make him sleep deeply. That will make the research easier. Floria smiles at her father. I will make the scent seep deep into his heart. He places a hand on her head. As expected of my daughter, you have great potential. Duke Belen chuckles and leaves. Floria watches his figure fade into the distance. Then get to work, Floria. Hearing the clanking of chains, she startles and turns around, frowning. At last, this day has come. I can finally meet the male lead who will cause my miserable death in the novel. Floria recalls, I remember reading How to Tame Your Black Panther Boyfriend. I kept reading that novel until I eventually fell asleep. When I woke up, I discovered that I had transmigrated into the body of the villainous supporting character, Floria Belen, the daughter of Duke Belen. Once I realized I had miraculously entered a novel and had no way of returning to the real world, I became a respected member of the Belen ducal family. I know the male lead will lose control during the Duke's cruel experiments, and I will die amid the chaos. Lost in thought, Floria fails to notice someone calling her. Floria, what are you doing? A young man with long pale blue hair and blue eyes stands before her, smiling gently. Adrian, frail and kind, is the only warm presence in the cruel Belen house. Adrian approaches her with concern. You are standing there motionless. Are you feeling unwell? While answering him, Floria slips a small bottle of liquid into her pocket. No, I was just thinking about something. She makes up another excuse. A rare species was recently brought in, and I suppose I got too absorbed in thinking about it. Adrian tilts his head. You mean the Black Panther brought from the palace? Floria smiles and quickly finds a reason to leave. That is right. I should go check on the Black Panther. Father may have finished his experiment. Adrian gently reminds her. All right, go quickly. Be sure to take care of yourself. She smiles. Do not worry. There will not be any danger. My brother is so gentle and adorable. Floria walks to a wall with a glowing pink crystal embedded in it. She thinks, I may not care much about my own life, but I hope kind people will not have to die. If the plot follows the original story, the male lead will kill everyone. Floria touches the crystal and says, by the authority of the bloodline heir, open. A door opens, and Floria slowly descends the dark stairs. As she walks, she thinks, I've already made up my mind. Floria thinks, the Flower Clan bloodline is truly absurd. Even if it costs me my life, I must change the story and save those lovable people. An eerie silence fills the air. The beast's cell gradually comes into view. When Floria appears, looking alarmed, the beast notices her and slowly rises. She says anxiously, so he extracted your flesh and blood. The beast roars, startling Floria. The beast snarls. Floria hastily takes out the bottle from earlier and says softly, I will ease your pain. She drops several drops on her hand and closes her fist. It begins to glow. Magic flows toward the beast, which blinks slightly at the strange phenomenon. The aura from Floria's palm soothes his wounds. Floria softly says, "Cutter." The beast's eyes widen. Her heart pounds nervously as she asks, "That is your name, right?" The beast finally speaks, startling Floria. "Why do you know that?" Floria is stunned, her heart racing as she explains, "I am from the Flower Clan, though I'm only a half-blood." Inwardly, she thinks, he can speak before even turning human. Cutter grows somewhat impatient. Even the Flower Clan cannot read minds. "You should tell me the truth." Floria thinks, this is great. Maybe I can persuade him. She confidently says, "The Flower Clan has the ability to see the truth in a person's heart. I used the one opportunity one have in my life on you." The Flower Blessing is an ability that reads another's heart, and it also serves as a marriage contract between two people. In truth, as a half-blood, I do not possess that ability, but his name is far too familiar to me. Floria looks at him firmly. "I want to make a deal with you. I know you can transform into a human. I will find a way to remove the sealing collar around your neck, so you can escape this castle. But when that time comes, you must help me and the others escape as well." Cutter looks rather surprised. Floria continues, "What do you say? Are you willing to make this deal with me?" Cutter makes a demand. "Then enter this cage first." Floria stares at him blankly. "What?" The beast smiles faintly. "Did you not want to make a deal with me? If you do not trust me, how can I trust you? Besides, if I borrow your magic, I can transform into human form, though it will only last for a short while." Floria hesitates. "I have to earn his trust." "All right." The book said that when Cutter went mad, the sealing collar around his neck shattered and scattered everywhere. I have to remove that collar while he is still in his right mind. Uneasily looking around, she steps inside. "I am inside now," she says. Cutter lies down. "Pour your magic into the sealing collar." Floria raises her hand and frowns in discomfort. Suddenly, she becomes dizzy and tightly shuts her eyes. All my magic was drained away in an instant. Her entire body trembles. "No, I cannot hold on any longer." The beast gradually takes human form and mutters in irritation, "These damned iron chains." Floria is extremely dizzy when a low, husky male voice sounds above her. She opens her eyes. She looks up at Cutter, who smiles down at her with amber eyes. "I transformed as you requested." Floria blurts out, "You are so handsome." Before her stands Cutter in human form. His soft black hair resembles a deep, mysterious night sky, and his sharp eyes are those of a predator. When I read his description in the novel, I was so curious about what the male lead would look like. Cutter frowns and leans closer to Floria. "Are you afraid? Should I not appear friendlier in human form than as a beast?" Floria shrinks back in protest. "I am not afraid." Cutter leans in even closer, making her shiver. "And you say you are not afraid?" He grips Floria's shoulder. "I will not take your life. Stop trembling." Cutter stares at Floria. She looks extremely slender and fragile. Then his gaze suddenly falls on the glowing crystal on Floria's body. She hurriedly covers it. Cutter asks curiously, "What is that?" Floria hurriedly pushes him away. "Father is calling me. I have to go." Cutter watches her run away. Floria thinks uneasily, "I have been here too long. Can I get back in time?" As if remembering something, Floria suddenly stops and turns back to look at Cutter, who has returned to his beast form. She reminds him, "I will come back. We can discuss the deal then." With that, she hurries away. Cutter continues watching her from behind. As Floria runs away in a hurry, someone calls out, "Half-blood, where do you think you are going?" She grimaces in annoyance. "Why do I have to run into this irritating man? I'm looking for father. He summoned me." Lakis slowly descends the stairs, looking down on Floria with contempt. Why would father summon something as lowly as you?" Floria does not answer. Lakis Belen is Duke Belen's second son and the Duke and Duchess's only legitimate child. In the novel, Floria despised Lakis. However, I do not hold any ill will toward him. As she is lost in thought, Lakis's noisy voice continues. "Why are you not answering me? How dare a half-blood like you disrespect me?" Floria hears him and feels even more disgusted. She scoffs mockingly. "You and I are nothing alike. I am father's capable assistant." Lakis grits his teeth in anger. He raises his voice and reaches for Floria. "What did you say?" Lakis tries to slap her while shouting, "How dare a mere half-blood speak so insolently to me?" Floria frowns. "I do not have time to waste chatting with you." She uses magic to stop Lakis. A paralyzing floral scent renders people unable to move for a short while. He stares in shock as his whole body goes numb. "Why is my body not obeying me?" Floria says coldly, "There's no need to waste time on an idiot like you. Remember this. Do not provoke me again." Floria walks past Lacus, cursing him inwardly. Useless fool. She stops before a room and gently knocks on the door. Father, you sent for me? Duke Boleyn frowns. Yes, you were a little late. She calmly explains, I am sorry. I ran into Brother Lacus earlier. He says wearily, that useless fool. Then he asks Floria, how is that rare specimen? She smiles brightly. I just helped ease its pain. It seems to be somewhat sensitive. Duke Boleyn replies with satisfaction, take good care of it. I will not be going down there this week, so I will leave it to you. Floria smiles. Do not worry, father. Leave it to me. Satisfied with her answer, Duke Boleyn dismisses her. You may leave. Yes, father. Please rest well. She thinks. Father's eyes looked probing, as if he were testing me. Floria shudders as she leaves. It is so hard to get used to him. He did not seem to have anyone following me. So how did he know I visited the Black Panther? Floria's heart pounds with anxiety, but she resolves herself. No matter what, I have to be more careful from now on. She slowly approaches another room, the next place she must visit. A secret is hidden there. Every time I come here, fear and guilt leave me completely flustered. She knocks, and the door slowly opens. Inside, a woman with long, pale blonde hair sits on the bed. May I come in, madam? It has been a long time since I visited you. The woman is Eller Boleyn, Duke Belen's first wife. She has a gentle disposition and is kind enough to treat half-blood children as though they were her own. Memories of the past flood Floria's mind. Eller playing with her and happily saying, Floria, come here quickly. But one day, after helping a member of another race escape father's control, she became a mindless person who knew nothing. Floria's hand tightens around the hem of her skirt. They told outsiders it was an accident, but that was not the truth. Father was the one who reduced her to this state. Floria speaks with difficulty, trembling slightly. I will come visit you again. Eller says nothing and simply smiles at Floria. Floria turns and hurriedly leaves. She runs down a corridor illuminated by moonlight over the castle. She asks herself whether she can save herself and the people she loves from Father's grasp. After running some distance, Floria suddenly stops. Her trembling hands clasp together. I have come this far already, so why am I starting to be afraid? Under the moonlight, Floria tells herself firmly, you will succeed, Floria. You will definitely succeed, as promised. The next day, Floria goes down to the dungeon where Cutter is imprisoned. Hearing her footsteps, the Black Panther opens his eyes and watches Floria from behind the iron bars, momentarily stunned. Cutter approaches her, lets out a sigh of relief, and says seriously, let me make this clear first. Do not trick me again like you did last night. He teases her. What did I do last night? Floria blushes and curses the Black Panther inwardly. This man's skin is thicker than a castle wall. Cutter furrows his brow slightly. Fina, I understand. The cell door slowly opens. Come in first. Floria enters and removes Cutter's seal. She gently says, lower your head. Cutter receives her magic and transforms into human form. His entire body is naked before her. Floria hurriedly throws clothes toward Cutter and shouts, put these on. He picks them up curiously and asks, what are these? They're so big and loose. Floria turns away in embarrassment. They are clothes. Cutter calmly says, I have never worn clothes before. Floria quickly turns back and shouts, what? But when she sees that Cutter is still naked, she immediately turns away again, her face burning red. Of course, he has always been in Black Panther form, so naturally he has never worn clothes. Cutter looks confused behind her. Floria says, I will help you put them on. Do not move around. He smiles teasingly. As she dresses Cutter, Floria keeps looking to the side. This is so embarrassing. I do not know where I should look. She accidentally meets Cutter's eyes. He merely smiles and asks, why did your hand stop? Floria turns away in irritation. Is this man making fun of me? After tying the waistband, she says, there, you are dressed. Put them on yourself next time. Cutter answers, He examines the clothes on his body. They're not bad, but I think wearing nothing is better. As soon as he says that, he tears off one sleeve. Floria becomes furious inside. I specifically brought those clothes for you. She sighs tiredly. Anyway, let's talk about our deal. I will not beat around the bush. I want to marry you. Hearing her emotionless proposal, Cutter frowns and crosses his arms. Are you insane? Floria thinks. I feel like I may be insane too. She replies, but this is the only way now. My father will continue taking you for experiments, and one day you will lose your mind. She imagines Cutter going berserk. At that point, he will go mad and slaughter the entire Boleyn house. To be precise, it will happen 1 year from now. Confused, he asked another question. I do not understand what you are talking about. Do you have some peculiar inclination? Floria shouts furiously. Absolutely not. Do you think I want this? She begins explaining. To stop father from continuing his experiments on you, we need a reasonable excuse. He is obsessively fixated on collecting rare races. If he learns that I want to marry you, he will surely approve with both hands. Then you will have a better chance of escaping in the future, and for now, we will have an excuse to stop the experiments. Cutter falls silent and stares blankly for a moment. Was it because you used your skill on me? Floria avoided the question. What are you talking about? He voiced his speculation. Flower blessing is a skill used on one's mate. She was briefly flustered. How'd he know? She had only said one sentence, yet he had seen through part of the truth. The Flower Clan skills were indeed used on their mates. How did Cutter know that? Floria lowered her head and said, You're overthinking it. Deep down, she felt wronged. The truth was she had lied. She was a hybrid and could not receive the goddess's blessing, so she did not possess that skill. Yet his assumption made her feel guilty instead. As she was lost in thought, Cutter lifted Floria's chin and asked, If that's the case, then why did you use that skill on me? She gently pushed Cutter's hand away. He seemed sincere, but she still should not tell him the truth. Floria firmly replied. The situation was urgent. I had no choice. Cutter gave a mocking laugh and waved his hand. Fina. She was slightly startled by Cutter's decision. Was he really just going to let it go like that? He narrowed his eyes at Floria and murmured. But, hearing him trail off, she worriedly thought, is he going to name his terms? For him, this was hardly a losing deal. Cutter slowly approached Floria, lifted her face, and threatened, Don't even think about deceiving me. Cutter leaned close, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. You have to answer me. Be good. Floria grew a little nervous. Where his skin touched hers, it was scorching hot. A current ran up the back of her neck, making her hair stand on end. His fingers moved gently, as though he were playing with prey already delivered to his mouth. But the prey is not me, it is you. Those beastly eyes seemed to be telling her exactly that. Floria clenched her skirt, but this was her choice, the beginning of her own path. Therefore, she had to retain the initiative, at least until the true female lead appeared. Floria refused to let herself be at a disadvantage. Not a chance. Cutter's eyes widened in surprise. Taking advantage of the moment, Floria grabbed the chain around his neck and pulled him toward her. Cutter was caught off guard. Floria looked at him seriously and asked, Answer me. Do you agree or not? Their faces moved even closer. Floria repeated the word Cutter had just used. Be good. Their lips seemed about to touch, but he suddenly chuckled. Then he pulled Floria's hand and reclaimed the upper hand. The chain clinked. One of Cutter's hands held Floria's hand, while the other wrapped around her waist. Floria cried out in surprise. He gently stroked Floria's hair, praising her. You truly are a bold and fearless flower. Cutter smiled, lightly kissed her hair, and said, I agree. In a room somewhere within the Belen estate, the sounds of blows and curses rang out. You useless bastard. Duke Belen angrily pointed at a rare vase shattered across the floor. Lakis pleaded, Do you know what that was that you dared to break it? Forgive me, father. He knelt on the floor in shock, touching the bleeding wound on his forehead. Someone explained why Lakis was in such a miserable state. After getting drunk, Lakis had caused trouble again. Duke Belen pointed at him and roared, Selling 30 fools like you wouldn't be enough to buy back a single one of those. Someone revealed the reason for the Duke's fury. He broke Father's mana crystal. Lakis stammered in terror. Father, I didn't mean to. I only wanted to help you. Duke Belen became even more enraged. What did you say? Useless trash. To think there is such worthless garbage in my castle. Duke Belen drew his sword, preparing to discipline Lakis. This time, I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Adrian and Floria had been standing quietly to one side. Seeing Duke Belen about to do something truly dangerous, Adrian anxiously said, If this continues, something terrible will really happen. Floria, she hurriedly ran over to stop him. Father, please calm down. Duke Belen impatiently shouted, Let's see who dares to stop me. Floria steadied herself and intervened. Father, I'm sorry. I simply don't want you wasting your strength on something worthless. Floria shot Lakis a sidelong glance. Don't look at me like that. I'm not saving you. She suddenly smiled. Perhaps because our eldest brother isn't here, Lakis has been feeling restless. And since he idles about every day, he must be bored. Why not put him in charge of the wastewater reservoir? Father. Duke Boleyn fell into thought. The wastewater reservoir? It was the place where the waste from magical experiments was collected. Wastewater from the experimental tower and animal pens was all discharged there. Though it was extremely filthy, the experimental waste had to be managed carefully for confidentiality. Floria smiled kindly and tilted her head as she asked Lakis, "You want to do something useful too, don't you, brother?" He no longer wore his usual arrogant expression. He could only stare silently at Floria. Hearing this, Duke Boleyn gradually calmed down. Lakis had no choice but to agree with Floria's proposal. "If father entrusts it to me, I will certainly do my utmost." Beside him, Floria put on a highly satisfied expression. "Father," he agreed, "that's wonderful. The wastewater reservoir has never had anyone in charge, and I've been quite worried about it." Floria brightly addressed Duke Boleyn. "That's right, father." She thought to herself that she had not intended to say these things at all, but since she had started, she had to give the performance everything she had. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, her eyelashes trembled incessantly, and her hands clasped together shyly. Then Floria smiled as brightly as a flower and announced, "Father, I want to get married." Anyone could clearly see the image of a young maiden sincerely wishing to marry. Everyone in the room was dumbfounded, and silence fell. Floria awkwardly thought, "I knew this would be their reaction." Adrian asked in shock, "Marry whom?" She warmly turned toward him. "Sorry, brother." The beast locked in the cave. His eyes widened. "T the huge black panther?" Floria nodded. Duke Boleyn asked in confusion, unable to hide his surprise. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Seeing Duke Boleyn's reaction, Floria thought, just as expected, "He is extremely surprised." Floria said, "I want to help you, father. Isn't there a legend? The legend says that beasts are drawn to flowers. I never thought it would turn out to be true. You are confident that you can tame that beast?" Duke Boleyn's expression softened somewhat. "There is indeed such a legend, but there is no need to marry it, is there?" Floria calmly answered. "That way, we can gain leverage over the imperial family." Duke Boleyn froze. Floria explained why she wanted to marry that Black Panther. "That's right. I want to find a way to make that beast take human form. Long ago, magical beasts with powerful mana could transform into human form on their own." She recalled Cutter's past. He had been born in beast form and imprisoned since childhood, yet the pure blood of the Leo Poland imperial family truly flowed through his body. What would happen if such a being could turn human? That alone would be enough to overturn the entire empire. Where father asked, "Can you really do it?" Floria gave a sinister smile. In a Leo Poland empire, the theological faction and the magical studies faction existed. The theological faction was the majority. It believed that the imperial family possessed divine blood, belonged to the traditional nobility, and was absolutely loyal to the imperial family. In contrast, the magical studies faction had absorbed knowledge from other empires and had not been established in the empire for very long. They believed that calling the imperial family sacred, while treating the creation of new things through magical studies as taboo, was itself a contradiction. If society could not accept diverse new things, it had no way to advance. This became a major weakness of the Leo Poland Empire. In the end, the empire acknowledged magical studies, but deceived the world by concealing the mana crystals used in inventions and presenting them as gifts from the gods. Floria continued ruthlessly, "I will give you a weakness you can use against the imperial family." Hearing this, Duke Boleyn suddenly became excited and laughed. "So that is why you brought up marriage?" She eagerly replied, "Yes. Although he is only a beast, he has nevertheless been entered into the imperial family's genealogy. Rumor has it that the crown prince born to the empress was frail and tragically died young. Later, evidence was found that the empress had taken contraceptive medicine, and she was deposed. But in truth, it was all a false accusation. Through this method, the imperial family concealed the beast-form crown prince and erased him completely from the world." Duke Boleyn's face lit up with interest. If the world learned that the crown prince rumored to have died young was still alive, his expression became deeply absorbed. "But my daughter, why didn't you discuss such an excellent idea with me first?" Floria thought to herself, his words sound gentle, but they are sharp and heavy. Of course, how could this suspicious old man trust me so quickly? She clenched her skirt, her voice trembling slightly. "Father," Floria suddenly raised her voice, "I don't want to marry some ordinary, useless man." Duke Boleyn, stared blankly. What? Wearing a pitiful expression, Floria shook her head repeatedly. I have always wanted to help you, father. But if I marry, I will have to leave the castle. And no matter which noble young lord comes to propose, I will never be satisfied with them. They are all far too ordinary. This time, real tears fell from her eyes as she pleaded with her father. Please let me do something greater, father. Will you agree? After a moment, Duke Belin burst into laughter. Floria, Adrian, and Lakis were all stunned. Ha ha! I knew you were a child who would satisfy me. I never expected you to be so sensible. Duke Belin placed a hand on Floria's shoulder and happily turned to leave. Very well, do as you wish. Floria happily said, Thank you, father. As he walked away, he said, Give that beast another identity. Before he turns human, tell him about this marriage arrangement. Give him the title of a prince from the continent of Rosia across the sea. That will do. Floria finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, father. Relaxing, she thought, that is wonderful. Cutter's current identity is that of a beast. Calling him my husband would be absurd. But if our marriage crosses continents, that works perfectly. Before leaving, Duke Belin added, I will send your marriage contract to the Imperial Palace as soon as possible. Suddenly, a loud shout stopped him. Adrian, wearing a grave expression, said, Please wait. Floria silently cried out his name in alarm. Adrian's tone was somewhat impatient. Even if it is a fake marriage, marrying an animal is still absurd. Floria was confused. Isn't this unlike the quiet and mature Adrian I know? What is wrong with him? Duke Belin bluntly said, I have already made my decision. Adrian ran forward and grabbed Duke Belin. Father, listen. Seeing what her brother was about to do, Floria could not help worrying. Oh no, the consequences of touching father. Adrian persisted. This method of yours. Suddenly, he cried out in agony. Act, Floria shouted. Brother. Adrian's heart clenched, and he struggled to breathe. Floria witnessed it all. She could only stand there and watch her brother Adrian cry out in pain, unable to do anything. Act. Belin glared at Adrian and said, How many times have I warned you? You are not allowed to touch me. Floria saw that the ring on father's hand was connected to the collars worn by her two brothers and her younger brother as well. Father could use the chains to summon them and to torment them. Because of those collars, they had no way to escape the castle. The collars could not be removed, and they could also track their locations. Once, despite father's torment and oppression, Adrian had stubbornly resisted. Floria recalled that scene. She had run over, fallen to her knees, and cried. Adrian endured such horrific torment for the sake of his siblings. Later, Adrian had softened. No matter how disgusting father's orders were, he would accept them as though swallowing honey. Belin walked past her and said, Floria, go ahead. I trust that you will satisfy me. Unable to object, she submissively answered, Rest assured, father. Floria lowered her head in fear. What a terrifying existence. After gaining her father's approval, she could freely enter and leave the cave, and the research on Cutter was halted. A few days later, news of her impending marriage spread throughout the empire. In the dungeon, Cutter and Floria spoke together. He remarked, I never expected you to truly take things this far. Floria happily sat down and replied, I always keep my word. From that day on, many more furnishings were added to the cave. The bed, tables, and chairs were all of the finest quality. Floria thought, for now, I have successfully deceived father, but Adrian is fiercely opposed to this. At the time, only Floria and Adrian were there. He loudly declared, I absolutely will not agree to this. Floria looked at him and thought, unlike before, his opposition is very firm. But I cannot tell him my plan. Floria lay on the bed and squirmed in frustration. Forget it. Since I've come this far, I must see it through. What good is there in saying these things now? Then she sat up and reminded Cutter, right, in front of the others, you have to pretend to obey me. If father or my brothers discover the truth, we are finished. Cutter ignored Floria and turned his face away. Annoyed, she asked, Did you hear what I said? Suddenly, Cutter heard approaching footsteps. He immediately warned her, someone is coming. The two of them nervously looked toward the entrance of the cave. Floria worriedly thought, what? Could it be father? Didn't he say he would not come down here this week? At last, the visitor appeared. Floria stared at the person in surprise. He had gleaming silver hair, slightly upturned eyes, and clear pale blue irises like autumn water. His broad shoulders and narrow waist made it clear that he came from a military background, and the cloak he wore suited him perfectly. It was her eldest brother, Rika, the eldest son of the Belen house. Rika, Floria opened the door and ran toward him. When did he return from the capital? She had never heard that he was coming back. He had not even changed out of his uniform. Had he come straight to the cave as soon as he arrived home? But why? Floria hurried over. Brother Rika, I never expected you to return so soon. If I had known you were coming, I would have gone to welcome you. How have things been for you in the capital? As she spoke, she recalled the contents of the original novel. The novel had not described Rika much. He seemed to exist only to carry out father's orders. Although they had grown up together, she knew almost nothing about him. Floria was so lost in thought that she did not notice Rika had already seen Cutter. He asked, "Is that the animal?" Floria did not understand at first. What? She was extremely surprised. Did he come specifically to see the beast? She hurriedly said, "Ah, yes. He is from the Imperial Palace." Before his sister could finish, Rika walked past her and asked, "Are you really planning to marry that monster?" Floria was startled. How did he learn about the marriage so quickly? Then she replied, "He is not a monster. He is the crown prince of the Leo-Poland Empire, and he will soon become my husband." Rika looked at Cutter suspiciously. No matter how he looked at him, he was merely a wild beast, and a large one at that. Hearing Rika describe him that way, Cutter looked at him and mockingly remarked, "This little sparrow is quite bold." Floria jumped in alarm. She glanced at her brother and silently sighed in relief. Fortunately, Rika did not seem to have heard Cutter's words. What a relief. Then she turned and glared at Cutter. How could he call her brother a little sparrow? Rika was a hybrid of the bird clan, and he possessed the extremely rare bloodline of the silver eagle. Calling him a sparrow was truly a little. As she was thinking, Rika called out to Floria, "Do you really want to sleep with this monster?" Hearing the question, Floria closed her eyes in contemplation, then answered, "Yes." After he transforms into human form. Unable to accept this, Rika drew his sword, startling Floria. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Then I will deal with him before he transforms." Floria cried out in confusion. "What? You're going to kill him?" Rika moved ever closer to the dungeon and answered his sister, "If I can take his life in one strike, all the better." It seemed, however, that Cutter intended to resist. Rika then swung his sword at Cutter. Seeing this, Floria thought, he really is one of Father's collectibles. Isn't that why he is fighting Father? Rika, meanwhile, assessed the Black Panther. This guy looks easy enough to handle. It probably would not take much effort to deal with him. The beast and the man were about to fight. Standing outside, Floria tried to think of a way to stop them. At the very least, she had to stop one of them. Who should she stop first? Forget it. She ran over and shouted, "Cutter, stop right now." The two of them stared blankly at Floria. Her voice echoed throughout the cave, freezing them in place. Hearing her voice echo like that, Floria blushed in embarrassment. Rika asked gloomily, "You even gave him a name?" Floria replied, "I can't keep calling him Magic Beast forever." She thought, "Besides, I cannot call him by his real name, Cutter." Cutter turned to her angrily and asked, "Is that a name for a kitten?" Cutter then retracted his claws. Floria was delighted to see it. "This is my chance." She led her brother back toward the manor and said, "Rika, go upstairs first." Rika started walking, but just as he neared the door, a strange sound rang out. Then an eagle landed on Rika's hand. It was Fur. Floria approached and stroked the little bird. "Fur, I have not seen you in so long." Rika smiled faintly at the sight. As she petted Fur, Floria wondered, why did Rika hear about my upcoming marriage so quickly? The news probably has not reached the capital yet. Besides, Cutter is locked inside the cave. She glanced to the side and noticed a familiar figure standing by the window. It was Adrian. Rika spoke. "Floria, do you truly intend to be with that beast?" She cut him off. "I will not tell Father that you tried to hurt Cutter. We will see each other again at dinner." Then she turned and left. But she inadvertently noticed something strange about her eldest brother. Did I see that wrong? It looked like he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. That evening, Floria was in her room. She called to the maid standing beside her, "Cheryl." The maid respectfully replied, "Yes, my lady." Floria said, "Help me braid my hair to one side." Cheryl awkwardly did as told and asked, "My lady, is this all right?" "Yes." Her ruby-like eyes sparkled beneath her wavy curls, which had been braided and swept to one side. Her snow-white skin and rose-like beauty complemented each other perfectly, yet she still did not feel worthy of the Belen family's rose. Floria looked at herself in the mirror for a moment, then stood up. "Leave it like this. I must go downstairs." Reaching the dining table, she said, "Is everyone here already?" Duke Belen scolded his youngest daughter. "You are late." Floria gently answered, "I'm sorry. It has been so long since we last gathered for a meal, so I dressed up especially for it. She glanced toward Adrian, but saw him turn away. He is still angry. There is nothing I can do to resolve this. It was difficult for anyone to accept, in such a short time, that their beloved younger sister was going to marry a beast. Duke Belen began. Everyone is here now. Since Rika returned early, I arranged this family dinner. Let us eat. The Belen family began their meal. Duke Belen abruptly asked, "How is that thing doing?" Rika replied, "How has it adapted over there?" Floria was confused. Are they talking about that? In exchange for Cutter, the Belen family had presented the imperial family with a unicorn. Although it looked exactly like the creature from mythology, it was actually just one of Father's experiments, a stitched-together animal, a horse with a horn and wings. Duke Belen frowned. Good. When I created it, I used up several hundred magic beasts. We absolutely cannot let it die so easily. Rika added, I heard the 7th prince intends to unveil it to the public on the Day of the Gods. It seemed that the 7th prince intended to display the unicorn on the Day of the Gods and declare it a spiritual gift, proving that the Empire's authority remained secure. In truth, the Belen family and the 7th prince were much alike. As she ate, Floria thought, how ridiculous. After finishing his meal, Duke Belen said, I am counting on you with this matter, Rika. Rika calmly replied, You flatter me, father. Duke Belen continued, Starting that day, I will leave the city for 1 week to attend the regularly held Magic Studies Conference. Rika, I am placing the household in your care. While I am away, pay close attention to matters at home. Rika replied, Yes, father. Meanwhile, Floria thought, So someone will be coming to watch us. Then Duke Belen called to Floria. After the conference ends, I intend to announce your marriage. She smiled, thinking, once the marriage is announced, I will have work to do. She replied, That is wonderful, father. Upon hearing this, neither of her brothers had any appetite left. They both fell silent, looking dejected. Floria was puzzled. It is understandable for Adrian to be like this, but why is Rika acting this way too? Duke Belen continued, By then, I want to see rapid progress. Make that fellow turn human as quickly as possible. Floria replied, Yes, I will do my best. Then he left the room. I will be going now. Continue your meal at leisure. After her father left, Floria said, Then I will excuse myself from the dinner as well. She thought, Phew, I am exhausted. I need to hurry too. Just then Rika approached. Floria, come with me. She could not help but be surprised. Why does Rika suddenly want to see me? She glanced toward Adrian and saw him turn his face away, making her even more confused. Could it be related to Cutter? It must be because of what happened in the cave today. Rika took her into his room and pulled out a letter. You need to attend an event. Floria asked, What is this? He explained, I heard that the young lady of the Sway family has recently acquired a rare foreign race. Go and find out exactly what it is. Hearing this, Floria hesitated. Collecting exotic races as pets was common among the nobility, so it was not usually a major matter. But if even the Belen family wanted to investigate it, then this rare foreign race must be quite extraordinary. Still, this did not make much sense. Calling me here alone so late at night means he wants me to attend a tea party. Rika continued, I have already replied to them. You will attend in 3 days. Within the Magical Studies faction, only the Belen family had been elevated to the rank of Duke. Most nobles of the theological faction subtly rejected and even looked down on the nobles of the Magical Studies faction. Yet they did not dare show the slightest expression of contempt toward the Belen family, heroes of the Empire who manufactured weapons for war. Therefore, the young lady of the Belen family, Floria, had become an exceptional presence in high society, an untouchable flower on a lofty mountain. Young noblemen of every school fawned over Floria. Though the young ladies envied her extraordinary beauty, they could only resent her in secret. Floria sighed. That is why situations like this are so uncomfortable. Sorona Sway. She is the one who incites everyone to hate me. That woman absolutely despises any young lady who attracts more attention than she does. To slander me in society, she has gone to great lengths. For instance, making others spill wine on me. She spreads rumors among the young noblemen that I am a witch. There is nothing she will not do. Of course, none of her tricks have had the slightest effect on me. Lying on her bed, Floria pondered, Sorona hates me, so after acquiring a rare foreign race, she actually invited me to her tea party. Just what kind of extraordinary creature did she obtain that she is so eager to show off to me? Or perhaps something has happened. Floria rested her arm across her forehead and sighed. I have not even gotten a handle on my own affairs yet. Suddenly, a low voice interrupted her thoughts. You should obediently go to sleep. Floria turned sharply toward Cutter and sat up. I am sorry. I asked Rika to withdraw the order sending me there, but he refused. It will not take much time, but I'm still worried about leaving Cutter here alone. Floria looked troubled. I thought that once father left the manor, I would have enough time to relax. But then Rika did this. What exactly is he planning? Floria got up to leave, not forgetting to instruct Cutter. There's a chance I will not be able to come here tomorrow. Be good and wait for me to return, all right? Come here. Lower your head. He obediently did as she said. If anyone saw this, they might think he was merely an oversized pet cat. Floria was surprised. A crack? It seems this collar reacts to my mana. A stream of mana flowed into it, glowing with a soft pink light. She said, I will transfer mana to you. Try and see whether you can turn human. Cutter watched her actions, then said something that would make anyone who heard it squirm. Are we going to spend our first night together now? Is that not too soon? Floria's eyes widened, and her cheeks instantly flushed. What? Cutter calmly continued. Did you not say that once I took human form, you would have intercourse with me? She remembered her conversation with Rika. Do you really intend to have intercourse with that monster? Floria angrily shouted and pinched Cutter. Not a chance. He cried out in pain. Embarrassed. She squeezed her eyes shut and scolded him. Cutter, why do you insist on remembering only that sentence? Transform first. After she had been transferring mana for some time, Cutter still had not transformed into a human. He softly said, It will not work. Floria stared blankly. What? Cutter continued. I cannot transform for quite some time. Floria kept transferring mana without any progress, until she had nearly exhausted all of it. She collapsed tiredly onto the bed and complained, I'm almost out of energy. Cutter calmly replied, What a pity. It failed. Floria sat up angrily. Are you enjoying the show? She could not understand it. Why did it not work? Before, did he not transform into a human quickly after receiving my mana? Floria probed. You are not deliberately resisting me, are you? Cutter replied with slight irritation. I am the one who wants to escape this animal body as soon as possible. All right. She was beginning to feel faint. Then what exactly has gone wrong? Everything is so hazy right now. Before Floria could finish speaking, she collapsed against Cutter from exhaustion. He only watched her silently. She has no guard up at all. Not only does she dare enter an iron cage, she even dares lean against me and fall asleep. A gentle light spread as Cutter took human form and caught Floria. She knows perfectly well that with a simple bite, I could crush her slender neck. And yet, Cutter slowly lifted Floria into his arms, silently evaluating his future wife. She truly is far too naive. Cutter gently laid Floria on the bed and touched her sleeping face. She is deeply asleep. She must be tired from consuming too much mana. Cutter smiled as he looked at Floria, idly caressing her face. I'm not annoyed by this at all. Cutter's amber eyes flickered. He even found it rather interesting. He began to recall his first encounter with Floria. The first time he saw her in the Imperial Palace basement, he assumed she was no good. She had used her wonderful scent to put him into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he had already fallen into their hands. From the beginning, it had all been unusual. Cutter gently stroked Floria, then touched the collar around his neck, the sealing collar that had bound him his entire life. It had reacted to her scent, and she had even caused a crack in it. In fact, with one decisive bite, he could immediately shatter this collar and escape. The moment he realized that, he had already formed a plan. Remembering Floria's determined expression, I want to make a deal with you. I'm coming in. Who would have thought that this reckless flower would walk willingly into his jaws, without considering the consequences? Cutter brushed Floria's hair aside and slowly unbuttoned her dress, revealing her pale back. Cutter chuckled. Just as I thought, the Flower Clan can use the Flower Blessing to learn a certain truth. After using that ability, a floral pattern appears across their entire back. The pattern usually extends almost to the shoulders. Yet there was not the slightest trace of the Flower Blessing on her body. Cutter pulled the blanket over Floria and fell into thought. What is going on? Why does she know my name? Why does the collar react to this beautiful flower? Yet Floria knew nothing. She remained fast asleep, breathing evenly. At first, I thought this flower was deceiving me, but she keeps pouring mana into the collar. If this continues, one day it will shatter into pieces. Cutter raised a hand to his mouth and smiled like a predator. Marriage is probably difficult. After all, few would propose marriage to an animal. Cutter toyed with a lock of Floria's hair. Then he gently kissed it. Only a fool would abandon prey that had delivered itself right to his mouth. Suddenly, footsteps approached. Cutter calmly said, "Oh." His eyes turned toward the hazy figure outside. "Have you come?" The next day, Floria sighed. Exhausted, she thought, "What is wrong with my mind?" Inside the carriage heading to Lady Sorona's tea party, Floria pressed a hand to her head, her thoughts in turmoil. Though we have made a deal, falling asleep without even the slightest guard around him was truly a little. Floria's eyes suddenly widened, and her cheeks faintly flushed. But that was the first time I saw what he looked like while sleeping. Remembering yesterday, Floria had awakened to find Cutter sleeping beside her. Though he was a huge and fierce beast, he looked rather adorable when asleep. Returning to the present, something still felt wrong. Floria anxiously thought, "I poured all my mana into the collar, yet he still could not transform into human form. Could something have happened to Cutter?" Seeing Floria's expression, Cheryl worriedly spoke. "My lady." Floria instinctively turned toward Cheryl. "What is it?" It was rare for her to speak first. The maid became flustered, wringing her hands together. "Are you feeling unwell somewhere?" "I am very worried about you, my lady." Floria reminded her, "Before I speak, I do not permit you to open your mouth first. And if I were feeling unwell, I would have already sent you out of the carriage." Cheryl merely fell silent. Looking at her, Floria silently assessed her. "Actually, she is very kind. Her concern for me is sincere. But I cannot become too emotionally attached to her. If the steward discovers it, she will be replaced, and that would mean her death. It has always been this way." The carriage stopped at the ducal villa, and the driver called out, "We have arrived." A servant helped Floria down and respectfully bowed to welcome her. Floria steeled herself. "I should deal with the immediate matter first. The most important thing now is to carry out Rika's order." The servant gently opened the door and invited her in. Beyond it lay a garden bursting with vibrant flowers. Sorona's greenhouse was famous in social circles. These unique flowers could usually only be seen in book illustrations, but here rare orchids bloomed beneath tall, lush trees. As expected of its reputation, this place was incredibly luxurious and splendid. As Floria looked around, one of the young ladies invited to the tea party warmly called out, "Who is this?" "Lady Floria, you came." Floria politely greeted her. "It had been a long time, Lady Sorona." Sorona said in slight surprise, "You actually came. You have no idea how happy I am." Floria quietly took her seat. The girls around her began chatting among themselves. "I never expected to meet Lady Floria here. I am truly honored. I have heard so much about you as well." Floria took a sip of tea and said, "I am also pleased to have received your invitation, Lady Sorona. This greenhouse is even more beautiful than the rumors say." Sorona smiled brightly and said proudly, "That's right. I put a great deal of effort into this greenhouse." Soon, the young ladies began chatting enthusiastically. "Haha, young lady, you really are something. So, what happened to that young nobleman afterward?" Floria glanced at the cat-eared maid standing behind Sorona. Noticing this, someone asked, "Do you like Lily?" A young lady suddenly exclaimed, "So you've taken a cat person as well?" Sorona began showing off. "That's right. She's very obedient and listens to everything I say." Floria silently assessed the maid. Everyone knew that the cat people had fierce pride, yet this one was like a puppet that anyone could command. So, she was wearing a mind control collar. Although this type of collar did not work on high-ranking beast race members like Cutter, it was enough to control those of middle or lower rank. Floria exposed her, but it seems you have not kept her for very long. This kind of collar can damage a cat person's mind. It is not even permitted for use on human slaves. Sorona immediately defended herself. Her temperament is rather fierce. "I only did it for safety reasons." The other girls did not think much of it. They believed her and praised Lily instead. "What an adorable animal. She actually has a beast race pet. How enviable." Floria fell silent. Their reactions were as though they were looking at monkeys in a zoo. Sorona continued boasting, "Besides Lily, I keep many other beast race pets as well, young Lady Floria. As someone from the Magical Studies faction, you must know a great deal about the beast race, right?" Floria calmly answered, "Yes. Such things are fairly common." The other girls stared at her, their full attention now on Floria. She said nothing more and quietly drank her tea. The other young ladies began praising the Belen family's young lady. "These beast race members cost as much as an entire house, yet you find them ordinary, as expected of the Belen family. By the way, young Lady Floria, are you planning to host a tea party? You must invite me when you do." Sorona appeared warm and welcoming, but inwardly, she was deeply displeased. She awkwardly cut in, "Actually, I invited everyone here today because I need to ask you all for a favor." Floria thought with satisfaction. Finally, she is getting to the point. The girls asked curiously, "A favor from us?" Sorona smiled faintly. "That's right, and I have a treasure I want to show you all. However, you must promise to keep what happens today a secret." The girls were extremely excited and readily agreed. Of course. Seeing this, Floria immediately understood Sorona's intentions. She wanted them to help spread the news afterward. Sorona rose to her feet. "We need to go somewhere else. Even our maids cannot accompany us." It truly seemed to be something precious. Floria and the other girls followed Sorona elsewhere, where she began rambling. "Actually, I keep a very special beast race member. He is so special that taking care of him is very difficult." Floria answered without much interest, "Is that so?" Sorona merely huffed in annoyance and continued talking. "Dampness. Salt." Floria suddenly opened her eyes, silently guessing that it seemed to come from the sea. Then, water suddenly splashed upward as a man emerged from below the surface. He had turquoise blue hair and a beautiful face, but his lower body ended in a fishtail. The moment she saw him, Floria knew what he was, a merman. Amid the splashing water, a figure swept through the air. Everyone was captivated after looking at him for only a moment. At the center was a pool filled with brilliantly shimmering, multicolored seawater. Within the clear water, a smile appeared. It was a merman with turquoise eyes. Sorona Sway proudly announced, "This is the rare beast I went to great lengths to acquire. His name is Oka. He is a merman." As soon as Sorona finished speaking, a man's voice mingled with the sound of the waves. He said softly, "My name is not Oka." Hearing it, Floria looked around in surprise, trying to find where the voice had come from. She wondered whether she had misheard, but the voice repeated, "My name is Atli. I am a merman from the sea." Meanwhile, everyone crowded around Sorona. One of them flatteringly said, "My goodness, you actually have a merman. I never thought mere folk truly existed." Another young lady chimed in, "Young Lady Sorona, you are amazing." Sorona proudly replied, "It seems Oka is in a good mood today. That is usually very rare." The Sway ducal house was in charge of the empire's foreign affairs. In order to maintain good relations with them, endless bribes were sent to the ducal villa. Sorona continued to boast, "This merman was given to my family by a merchant from Lucca, but my father presented him to me as a gift. This was because the Lucca merchant fleet had struck a reef in the Atlantic Ocean not long ago. Fortunately, Duke Edward had rescued them, allowing the members of the merchant group to survive. Afterward, they became suppliers to the imperial family." Floria suddenly understood more about the Sway family. So this was how a small merchant group had formed such ties with a ducal house. "I guess it would be something extraordinary, but I never expected it to be a merman. The merfolk are protected by the sea itself. Even fully armed warships were often overturned by whirlpools or crashed into reefs created by merfolk. Thus, the merfolk were the only beast race that could escape human hands." Atli's voice rang out beside Floria's ear again. "Are you listening? Stop pretending you cannot hear me." Floria suddenly realized something. That was right. She had heard that merfolk could transmit their thoughts directly to another person. Everyone else was still admiring the beautiful merman and exclaimed together, "Oka is smiling. Wow, he is so beautiful." Seeing their reactions, Floria thought, "It seems only I can hear his thoughts." The merman continued speaking to her. "I do not like that name. Merfolk are born with names of their own." Sorona turned to Floria and asked, "Young Lady Floria, have you ever seen a merman before?" Floria honestly replied, "No." Seeing Sorona's smug expression, Floria could guess what she was thinking. "Your family does not have anything like this, do they?" Floria continued, "This is the first time I have seen one." Sorona asked, "Is that so? Do you know anything about merfolk?" Resting her chin on her hand, Sorona thought, "So the Belen family is not all-powerful after all." Seeing Sorona's troubled expression, Floria asked, "Have you run into some problem?" Sorona awkwardly answered, "Well, he will not eat fish." Floria blurted out, "What?" Then she walked toward the pool. "Let me take a look." Atli urged her, "Come over here, quickly." Amid the sound of rushing water, she looked over the merman's body and exclaimed, "You are injured." Floria thought, "He looks so thin and pale." Atli replied through his mind, "I was not injured by humans, but when I regained consciousness, I found that I'd been brought here." Hearing that, Floria guessed what had happened. Had the Luca merchant group accidentally captured an injured merman and then given him to Sirona? Sirona said sorrowfully, "He is injured, and he refuses to eat. He is getting thinner by the day. It is truly worrying." Floria was rather displeased. They did not even know what merfolk ate or how to treat their wounds, yet they had brought one here. How thoughtless. She took a breath to calm herself. Merfolk do not eat fish. Floria stepped forward and called, "Young Lady Dylos." The other girl startled slightly. "Ah yes." Floria approached her, her gaze falling upon the girl's earrings. She complimented, "Your pearl earrings are lovely." Young Lady Dylos happily replied, "Teach, thank you for the compliment." Floria smiled gently. "May I borrow your earrings for a moment?" Young Lady Dylos did not mind and removed them, handing them over. "Here, take them." Floria went to Atli and lifted his face. Merfolk regard pearls as food. Atli licked a pearl and praised it. "It is delicious." He rubbed against Floria's hand. She smiled and turned back to Sirona. "If you feed him fish, how could he possibly avoid growing thin?" Sirona shuddered and stood frozen in place. Once her anger passed, Sirona regained her composed manner. Smiling, she said, "As expected, members of the Belen family are truly capable." Then, an animal suddenly leaped toward Floria, making her cry out, "Ah!" The animal slammed directly into Floria's chest. Caught off guard, she stumbled. Atli was also startled by the sight before him. Just before she fell into the pool, Floria looked toward Sirona and understood her intention. So this was her plan. Right before Floria fell into the water, a stream of magic pushed her back. But Floria did not understand what was happening. She warily looked around. That shadow had vanished. What was that just now? One of the young ladies cried out. The merman saved young Lady Floria, but Floria did not think so. In their eyes, however, Atli had clearly saved her in retaliation for Sirona's attempt to push her into the pool. Floria went along with it, though her words were little more than a provocation aimed at the immature young lady. "It seems this merman likes me better." With her scheme exposed, Sirona's face darkened even more, and her entire body trembled. As Floria walked away, she said, "I believe I have helped you solve a major problem. It is time for me to return to the manor." As she passed Sirona, she lowered her voice so only Sirona could hear. "I have never used the Flower Clan's abilities in front of ordinary people before, but a little scheming is acceptable, is it not?" Sirona froze at those words. Then Sirona politely saw her off. "Very well. Travel safely." Floria left just like that, while the other young ladies anxiously called out, "Young Lady Sirona." Floria headed toward the carriage. She thought she had completed the task Rika had given her. Once she was inside, she recalled what had just happened. What exactly was that black flame? How strange. Black flames. Could that be Cutter's ability from the novel? That cannot be. Evening shadows fell over the manor. Floria entered a room. The door made a clicking sound, announcing that someone had come in. Rika was still intently reading, but he seemed to have guessed who it was and said, "Report quickly." Floria told him about the close relationship between the Luca merchant group and the Sway family. They had presented an injured merman to Duke Edward in exchange for an appropriate reward. Rika asked, "Is there a way to bring him here?" She calmly replied, "Merfolk cannot stay out of seawater for too long, so it may be difficult. Besides, Virus is not here right now." Virus was the youngest son of the family. He was currently near the border, dealing with a merchant group that traded beast race slaves. Virus was responsible for luring rare beast race members and magical creatures back to the ducal manor. Naturally, some of them had been stolen from other ducal houses. Speaking of which, Virus should be returning soon. Rika told her, even if a merman leaves the water for a short time, he probably will not die. Once Virus returns, you and he will go bring the merman here. Floria pointed at herself in confusion. "I have to go too." Rika hesitative. "There is also," but he did not explain clearly. Instead, he sighed and said, "Forget it. You may go." At the same time, he placed the book down on the table. Seeing her brother's complicated expression, Floria could not help but feel suspicious. This was the first time she had seen Rika want to say something, only to stop himself. It was unusual. She probed, "Was sending me this time father's order?" Upon hearing his sister's question, Rika merely fell silent, unable to say a word. Night gradually fell. Floria went to where Cutter was being confined. It was indeed late, but she still wanted to check on him. Floria called out, "Cutter." Seeing him motionless, she thought, "Is he asleep?" Suddenly startled, she opened the cage with a creak. "Cutter," she worried. "Did Rika hurt him while I was gone? I should not have gone to carry out that task." Floria raised her hand and touched Cutter's fur. Her voice was filled with fear, and her beautiful hand trembled. "Please do not." Then Cutter suddenly opened his shining golden eyes and pinned Floria to the ground. Floria hesitantly asked, "You are not hurt?" He did not answer, instead asking her, "Were you hurt?" Floria exclaimed in surprise as Cutter transformed into human form and leaned close. In a spoiled tone, he said, "My heart hurts. What belongs to me has been tainted." "You reek of fish." She stared at him. "What did you say? And weren't you unable to transform?" Cutter stroked the corner of Floria's mouth and replied in a low voice, "Did I ever say that?" His golden eyes gazed at Floria intently. Her voice trembled as she asked, "What is happening to you?" Cutter's lips curved into a smile. "That is something you need to investigate for yourself. This transformation was not of my own will." Cutter's gaze moved to the green gem around Floria's neck. "I am feeling irritated." Then he offered a vague compliment. "It is beautiful." It was unclear whether he meant Floria or her necklace. His words made Floria's face flush red. She turned away and slapped Cutter's hand. "Answer my question first." Cutter caught the hand she was swinging around and said, "I already told you. This is not something I can control." He held Floria's hand tightly, affectionately biting one of her fingers. Cutter seemed to use quite a bit of force, making her cry out in pain. "HNG, that hurts." Cutter's tongue swept over Floria's finger. All she could do was make soft sounds as his warm breath flowed steadily over her fingertips. The Black Panther spoke with jealousy in his voice. "Do not bring another man's scent here again. I do not like it." Floria hurriedly pulled her hand back, shut her eyes, and snapped, "What are you talking about? You are not a puppy." She opened her eyes slightly. "Put some clothes on first." Cutter responded to her earlier remark. "I may not be a dog, but my sense of smell is very sharp. You smell like fish." Floria suddenly realized he was talking about Atlee. She gave a vague explanation. "I had to go out today and came into contact with a merman there." He simply looked at her and made a quiet sound of acknowledgement, as though he understood. Floria cleared her throat. "You truly cannot control your transformations? Then this is troublesome." She assessed the situation. His condition was unstable, which meant that the mana she had poured into the ceiling collar was unstable as well. She did not know whether that was good or bad. There were two possible reasons for the current situation. First, the mana in the collar might be leaking through the cracks. Second, the collar's mana might be devouring and expelling her mana. If it was the first case, that would be good. It would mean the mana in the collar was clashing with her mana. Under that effect, the cracks would not grow larger and the collar would soon break. Floria said, "Before father returns, I will find a solution." Cutter did not seem to care. "Do as you please." Floria saw him lifting his clothes, about to reveal something she should not see, and hurriedly shouted, "Stay still. You cannot do that." Floria's scolding left Cutter stunned. Floria was stunned as well. The two simply stared into each other's eyes. Floria panicked. "I accidentally sound as though I'm training a pet." Cutter smiled. "If you want to train an animal properly, you need to give it a reward." Floria asked in confusion, "What?" He seriously replied, "I obeyed you. I waited obediently for you to return. And I even submitted to wearing this cumbersome thing, did I not?" Floria thought that was true. "Yes, you were unusually quiet. I nearly thought you had died." Then Cutter suddenly frowned as he looked at Floria. Seeing that look, Floria felt guilty. What is it? What reward does he want? He is not a puppy, but cats need rewards too, right? His eyes sparkled as he urged her in a spoiled tone. "Well, hurry." Floria hesitantly raised her hand, pulled it back, then finally placed it atop Cutter's head. "Good boy." "Very good." Floria stroked his hair, silently evaluating him. In human form, he was different from when he was in beast form. His hair was very soft. Cutter shyly asked, "Is that really all?" Floria quickly pulled back her hand, unable to suppress her irritation. Hadn't she already praised him? Why didn't he seem any happier? She tested him with a question. "Will you really stay here obediently and wait for me to return?" Cutter replied calmly, "Of course." But Floria did not believe him in the slightest. Her skeptical expression was painfully obvious. "All right, I understand. I won't let anyone come in here. You'll turn back by dawn, right?" With that, Floria turned and left. In an unhappy voice, Cutter muttered to himself, "That little reward isn't enough. But I can give her a little something now. Maybe later, she'll willingly let me eat her." A malicious idea formed in Cutter's mind. Very soon, he would be able to grind this ceiling collar completely to dust, once the magic leaking through its cracks was fully gathered into his body. This collar had always suppressed his own magic, but Floria's magic was different. Her magic was not restrained by the collar. Instead, it was completely accumulated within it. As long as he used Floria's magic to maintain his human form, his own magic would gradually recover. Though it was still very weak now, it was enough to follow her. He really had waited obediently here, at least from his point of view. Cutter recalled biting Floria's finger and the pained expression on her face. A faint smile appeared on his lips, but then he suddenly froze. What was this? Why did he feel dissatisfied for no reason? It was not the frustration of being unable to move freely. Something about it felt wrong. That fresh blossom glowed crimson, flaunting its beauty. It was only natural that bees and butterflies would swarm around it, wasn't it? The night Floria slept in his arms, the only one who came looking for him was that silver-winged eagle. He recalled the sound of footsteps gradually approaching him that night. The footsteps stopped before the cage. Looking at the man before him, Cutter was not surprised in the least. "Oh, Brad, you came." Floria had been sleeping soundly in Cutter's arms. Rika glared furiously when he saw his younger sister in a prisoner's embrace. Drawing his sword, he ordered, "Release my sister." Rika had thought the other party was merely a beast. He never expected him to be this kind of beast. Cutter made a silencing gesture. "You'll wake her up." This only made Rika find him more repulsive. "You beast!" Cutter replied gently. "That's right. I am the beast you people brought here yourselves." Rika had originally believed he was merely an animal meant for research. He had participated in bringing this magical beast out from beneath the imperial palace, and had even offered a unicorn as payment. In exchange for his contribution, he obtained the key to that sealed chamber. Since their assignments had differed, Rika had not seen the beast with his own eyes at the time. However, he knew that magical beasts sent to the manor were imprisoned in the underground cave. He had not cared much about it then. Later, he remained in the capital alone to train the unicorn to adapt to its new environment, until he received a letter personally written by Anii. Rika tore the letter apart. Still furious, he demanded, "What did you do to Floria?" Hatred rose further in his heart. His little sister actually wanted to marry this beast. This was nothing more than trash abandoned by the imperial family. This bastard must have used some underhanded trick. Cutter gently stroked Floria's hair. "This beautiful flower proposed to me herself." As though deliberately provoking his future brother-in-law, Cutter gently kissed Floria's brilliant pink hair. Witnessing such disgusting and perverse behavior, Rika was so ashamed that his rage exploded. "I'll kill you." The power of darkness enveloped the cell, but it belonged to Cutter. Taking the opportunity, he continued teasing him. "You little fledgling are rather interesting." The pitch-black air protected its master, preventing Rika from approaching. Rika backed away in terror. These flames seemed to guard the inside of the iron cage, as if they possessed consciousness, putting pressure on the enemy before them. This was a magical beast ability, yet it truly could not compare to the other members of the imperial family. Rika recalled the Emperor's words. There is nothing special about him. The Emperor had said that Cutter possessed no magic, had no magical senses, no ability to control the elements, and no useful talent whatsoever. The Emperor did not regard his biological son as worthy of notice at all. That was why he considered him an experiment and sold him to them. Rika had never expected this man to be so far beyond imagination. Rika tried to remain calm and tightened his grip on his sword. Before this monster broke free from the collar, he had to kill it. Suddenly, Rika asked, "Do you think doing this is good for Floria?" Cutter said coldly, "You are only getting in her way. This flower has plans of her own." Rika could not help being startled. He remembered his previous conversation with his sister. Rika had asked her, "Are you really planning to sleep with that monster?" She had calmly replied, "Yes." After he transforms into a human. Only then did he realize why she had spoken such harsh words back then. Why? No, he could not let this man lead him around with mere words and leave like that. He had to kill him. Looking at his beloved little sister in the arms of the man he despised, Rika remembered how Floria had been so innocent and adorable as a child, yet so strong after growing up. He had failed to protect the innocent little Floria. In the end, she could only choose to defend herself. Then he asked, "What kind of deal do you two have?" Cutter smiled faintly. "If you want something, you must pay a corresponding price." Rika tried his best to calm down, but his hand remained clenched tight. It did not matter. He had already made up his mind. For her, he could give up everything. Returning to Floria's memories, she was walking through the corridor, admiring the plants as she thought. It had been a long time since she attended Sorona's tea party. Rika had not assigned her another task since then. Perhaps he was waiting for Virus to return. Who would come home first, Virus or Father? Either one returning first was enough to make her uneasy. Once Father returned, he would certainly inspect Cutter's condition. Once Virus came back, he would have to head out again immediately to bring back the merfolk. Floria recalled when she had touched Cutter in his beast form. Cutter's condition was still unstable. The collar continued to absorb a large amount of her magic, but why was he still unable to maintain his human form steadily? It was always like this. Whenever she was completely unprepared, he would suddenly transform into a human. It would be better if he put on clothes before transforming, but was that request a little too excessive? Floria blushed as she thought about it. Then someone called her name. Floria. His voice was gentle, like a spring breeze brushing against her face. It seemed she had not heard this voice for quite some time. It was Anian. It feels as though we haven't met in a long time. His smile carried a trace of helplessness. Perhaps the news of her upcoming marriage had troubled him. Why did he seem so much thinner? Floria asked, Brother, are you going to the garden? Andien replied, No. The butler conveyed a new assignment, and I'm preparing to handle it. Floria thought. Many times, the butler had conveyed assignments from Father on his behalf. Anian was responsible for investigating traders because he could understand the words of plants. When questioned by Anian, the plants would tell him everything they had seen. Those who tried to steal the relics within the manor or intended to reveal the family secrets. Once those traders were caught, they would be locked in the underground prison beneath the research tower. There, they would suffer brutal torture, pain worse than death. Floria clenched her skirt. So that was it. Anian was kind-hearted. Such matters were exceptionally cruel to him. The reason he did not dare resist was all because of her, wasn't it? Anian gently lifted her chin. Do not let yourself be harmed, ever. Try not to show her concern, she said. I'm fine. He lightly touched her hair. Why can't I hear what is in your heart? No matter the assignment, I am willing to do it. For you. Floria knew that was a lie. She could clearly see that his fingertips were trembling. What he feared most was killing. Brother Anian. Before he could finish speaking, she grasped his hand. Floria said warmly, You will always be my brother. No matter what I do, no matter where I am, that will never change. Right? Floria tried to comfort Anian. In this place filled with pretense and lies, this was the only warmth he could feel from his younger sister. Yes. His answer made her smile like a newly blossomed flower. You must trust me, Brother Anian. In the classical garden, overflowing with flowers, Floria felt utterly dejected. Brother Anian had gone to carry out his assignment. Her words had sounded resolute, but her heart was heavy. Then she heard a voice behind her. Where is Floria? It was Virus's voice. I'm asking where Ria is. The boy pushed open the door, covered in blood from head to toe. A maid replied, Young Lady Floria is in the garden. Virus cheered happily, wow. Then he widened his eyes. All right, I'll leave the rest to you. I'm exhausted from bringing them back here. He was referring to the magical creatures he had captured. One of the beast men who had been seized shouted, You are a disgrace to the beast race. Virus paused, turned toward him, and said chillingly, What did you say? The man screamed fearfully, You are a traitor to our people. Hearing that, Virus raised his claws. You're really annoying. Virus, the youngest son of the Belen family, was a hybrid of a werewolf and a human. He was about to attack when Floria appeared just in time. Virus! The boy immediately became obedient and threw himself into her arms. You're back, she asked. Feeling her warmth, he replied, I'm so tired. Floria thought, could the house have been noisy? You've worked hard on this trip. Come with me. Okay. Looking at him, Floria thought that he seemed to have completely forgotten about the beast men behind him. Floria glanced at them. Their clothes were torn, their bodies covered in wounds, some of which were even festering. And there was the look in their eyes. Virus innocently asked, What's wrong, Ria? Let's go already. She answered, let's go. Virus held Floria's hand and whined, I want to take a bath. I'm all dirty, and it's embarrassing. But I don't want to leave you, Ria. Floria crouched down and rubbed his head. She gently comforted him. Then come find me after you finish bathing. Virus pleaded, Can you dry my hair for me? As a model older sister, she could only indulge him. Of course, hearing that, the boy was delighted. As Virus ran away, he happily turned back and waved to Floria Belen. She warmly waved back. Floria tiredly thought that getting him into the bath really was not easy. Speaking of which, she had been too careless. She had never expected Virus to return first. In the original novel, Virus looked like an incredibly adorable little boy, but his personality was even crueler than Floria's. In the book, he had undergone experiments from the moment he first appeared, pushing his physical limits several times beyond those of ordinary beastmen. Anyone who let down their guard simply because he looked like a child had ultimately met their death. Floria Belen thought with relief. Fortunately, he was extremely obedient toward her. Still, being too obedient was also a problem. Floria Belen recalled a time when she was playing with a butterfly and casually said, "Butterflies are so pretty." Before a day had passed, Virus had caught 100 butterflies in the mountains and brought them to her. That was only a mild example of how he tried to please her. Once, while they were dining, Virus had even slit a maid's throat simply because she had carelessly offended Floria. The image of him, his face covered in blood, smiling at her and saying, "I did well, right?" was utterly terrifying. Floria closed her eyes, calmly sighed, and thought that she had told him not to do things like that anymore. Yet even now, the memory still frightened her. Suddenly, a voice called, "Floria." It was Virus, wearing only a short shirt and rabbit slippers. He looked incredibly adorable as he ran to his sister with a delighted expression. "I'm done bathing." Virus rushed over and wrapped both arms tightly around her. Floria said gently, "You need to dry your hair. You still have to greet the family, too." The boy clung even tighter to Floria Belen's skirt and shook his head as he whined. "Floria alone is enough for me." Floria thought that Virus did not like his brothers. Whenever they met, they acted as though they were enemies, shouting and causing commotion. Looking down at Virus with some concern, Floria silently sighed. Virus continued to cling to her. "I went on such a long trip before coming back. I'm so tired. Can I sleep with you tonight?" She hesitated. Virus used his sparkling, hopeful eyes to persuade his beloved sister. Floria finally agreed with a smile. "All right, but only tonight." Virus happily raised both arms and cheered. Floria Belen thought that it seemed she would not be able to escape this clingy child today. Night fell, and the moon hung outside the manor's window. On a warm bed, the two Belen siblings embraced as they talked. Virus said happily, "Floria, I'm so happy." Looking at her small, adorable younger brother lying contentedly in her arms, Floria silently prayed that if he could always remain like this, he would truly be like an angel. Werewolves were born without a gender. After completing their maturation period, they evolved into adult males or females. Therefore, Virus did not yet have a gender. However, he had looked like a doll from birth, so when the family registered him, they registered him as female. Floria suddenly said, "Oh, right, there's another new assignment." Hearing this, Virus looked confused. "Another one? I just got back." She gently explained, "You do not have to leave immediately. It only needs to be completed sometime this week. This time, you and I will go together." Virus asked in confusion, "Why do you have to go?" She replied vaguely, "I don't know either." Virus suddenly kicked off the covers and sat upright. "I'm going to go make things clear." Floria held her younger brother's shoulders and said softly, "Virus." He stopped and turned back. "Just leave dangerous things like that to me. I can't let you get involved." Floria was somewhat surprised, but quickly turned to comfort her angry younger brother. "Only this once. Besides, this mission is not dangerous. Virus will protect me, right?" Virus immediately became like an obedient little puppy and happily replied, "Of course, I'll definitely protect you well." Floria smiled happily, gently rubbed Virus's head, and said, "Thank you." She guided her younger brother back down onto the bed and tucked the blanket around him. Out of nowhere, Virus declared joyfully, "Floria, I'm definitely going to marry you." Floria stared blankly at him. Family members cannot marry each other. The boy grinned, unconcerned. "I don't care." Floria could not help worrying. Since he was 5 years old, he had always followed her around and loudly declared that he wanted to marry her. Even now, he had not given up on that idea. Floria reached out and turned off the bedside lamp. "You should sleep now." Virus obediently replied, "Good night, Ria." Yet she could not fall asleep immediately. She worried that if Virus learned she was about to marry someone else, he would certainly make a huge scene. It was too worrying. She should not tell him yet. Tomorrow, she absolutely had to find a way to avoid Virus, even if only for a little while. Could she succeed? Early the next morning, sunlight shone brightly over the manor. Virus's hurried footsteps rang through the garden as he anxiously called out, "Ria, Ria." Virus caught up to Floria Belen, grabbed her sleeve, and tugged at it pitifully. "I want to go too." She had expected this. He had been like this since early morning. If she cruelly sent him away, he might throw a tantrum and go kill innocent people again. Floria Belen forced a smile and comforted him. "I'll be back soon. What's underground is too sensitive. You can't come with me." Virus looked disappointed, but he obediently nodded. "Then you have to come home quickly." She hurriedly replied, I'll be back soon." Virus stood alone in the corner, forlornly watching his sister walk away. After Floria secretly entered a cave, unaware that Virus had quietly followed behind her, the cave door closed. The boy could only stand silently and stare toward the place she had entered. Virus was deeply disappointed and sad. He could not understand it all. With hurt in his eyes, he muttered, "Why do you have to hide it from me?" Standing alone, he thought, Floria must be hiding something from me. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Someone was approaching him. Virus curiously turned to look and found that it was Rika. He immediately asked, "Rika, were they keeping underground?" Rika's eyes flashed with disdain. "Mind your own business." Virus became furious at those harsh words. The boy snapped threateningly, "When I grow up, the first thing I'll do is kill you." Rika challenged him in return. "I'll be waiting." In the dark cave, Floria sighed as she walked. "Finally, I managed to avoid Virus." When she reached the end of the cave, Floria Belen was surprised to see Cutter locked in a cell, dressed neatly and looking exceptionally handsome. She teased him, "So you finally know how to dress properly." He retorted, "Isn't it because you train me so well?" Floria thought irritably. Every time he transforms, he exposes his upper body. Who wouldn't go crazy? Aloud, she dryly praised him. "Very good." Cutter stepped close to the cell door. "If so, hurry and give me my reward." Floria hesitated. Again, he was making such bold and straightforward demands now. Whenever she told him to wear clothes or turn around, he would demand a reward, having her pat his head or gently stroke his face. What would he want this time? Floria raised her hand and gently patted his head. "Is this enough?" Suddenly, Cutter caught her hand and said seriously, "Not enough." Floria asked in confusion, "What else do you want me to do?" Cutter suddenly pulled her closer. They gazed at each other affectionately, and before she realized it, one of Floria Belen's hand was pressed against Cutter's chest. Seeing this, Cutter bared his teeth in a satisfied grin. That just now doesn't count as the reward I deserve." He drew closer to Floria, his face nearly pressed against hers, making her embarrassed. Floria Belen blushed, thinking he's too close. His gaze became softer, as if he were lost in Floria Belen's beauty. Floria, meanwhile, was flustered, unsure what Cutter would do next. He leaned his lips closer to hers and whispered, "The reward I want." Just as their lips were about to touch, he gave an inscrutable smile and said, "Later." "Later, then." Startled, she shoved Cutter away. The Black Panther was pushed back by his future wife. She clutched her wrist and stared at him in confusion. What is this man trying to do? "I'm not his destined mate." The words had already slipped out, but perhaps he was only joking, Floria Belen thought. "You've been imprisoned alone in this dungeon your whole life. Do you feel wrong?" Cutter looked astonished. "Wronged about what?" Floria looked worried. "If you had been born in human form, the whole world would have been yours." Cutter had merely been born in the form of an animal, but the imperial family could not accept his existence. Afraid that this disgrace would be exposed to the public, they chose to hide Cutter away. When he was born, every maid in the palace was terrified because Cutter had taken the form of a Black Panther. His life changed drastically from that moment on. Cutter replied calmly, "Feeling wronged over something like that is useless." Raising his hand, he continued, "I have memories from when I was still in my mother's womb." He recalled the time when his mother was pregnant with him. Calmly, he said, "Everything my mother saw and heard during her pregnancy, I could feel as well." Hearing this, Floria Belen was stunned. He had memories even from inside the womb. Floria Belen said in confusion, "No wonder Cutter knows not only about the Flower Clan, but also so much about the Belen family." She finally understood. "I always thought it was strange. Where did he learn all those things?" "So that's why," she said aloud. Cutter said with deep hatred, I only want to bite the ringleader's throat off. I did nothing wrong. Neither did my mother. Floria Belen answered calmly. Once you get out of here, do whatever you want. The atmosphere around her suddenly darkened. Frightened, she thought, in the novel, the imperial family will eventually be destroyed. A completely new world will surely come afterward. Floria Belen suddenly imagined Cutter happily reuniting with a female lead. Feeling less worried, she thought, once Cutter meets the female lead, everything will surely go smoothly. Then I can live freely as well. Floria Belen bade Cutter farewell. I have to go now. She turned and left Cutter's cell. That night, I received a letter from Father. Floria Belen picked up the letter on the table and read it. The Magic Studies conference had ended, but because several matters remained unresolved, Father still had to stay at the Magic Tower. Floria put on a black cloak and thought, that's great. At least Father won't have to face Cutter alone. I can also keep the news of my upcoming marriage hidden from Virus for a few more days. She watched Virus's retreating figure as he called, Rhea. Virus stood at the door and called loudly, we should leave now. Floria Belen's face was full of worry, and she looked toward the window as though waiting for something. Floria quickly followed Virus. All right, let's go. Wearing a black cloak, Virus happily led the way while Floria hurried after him. Floria and Virus rode together in a carriage. She looked around and thought, before, I was only responsible for gathering information. This is my first time taking part in a transport operation. I am nervous. The carriage rattled along before coming to a stop at Duke Edward's estate. She saw the guards at the gate. As expected of a great noble's residence, soldiers had been stationed on all sides. It looked as though they would have to wait for the guards to change shifts before acting. Virus said, I'll go first. He confidently and cheerfully added, Rhea, just follow me. As a black wolf hybrid, Virus possessed extraordinary physical strength, along with the ability to control darkness and shadows. That made him the most suitable person for a nighttime infiltration. Using his power, Virus made both himself and Floria invisible, allowing them to move with ease. The two guards were talking. I'll leave the next shift to you. No problem. Virus and Floria silently passed behind them without being noticed. The gate creaked open. Virus asked, Rhea, where's the thing you mentioned? She answered, in that greenhouse. Floria opened the door and entered. Virus froze when he saw the eerie, shadowy figure before them. What is that? A gloomy aura radiated from it, and two bright golden eyes opened in the darkness. Floria calmly lowered her hood. Virus said, Rhea, get away from her. Don't worry, she isn't dangerous. Before them stood a maid with short black hair and glowing golden eyes. Floria recognized her as the CACAO woman she had met that day. Her maid's uniform was disheveled. It seemed Serona had abandoned her. Rhea, let's go quickly, Virus said. But Floria remained there, looking at the maid. Wait a moment. I'll help you take it off. She opened the maid's sealing collar. Freeing her was only a small favor, but by the time the maid's mind had collapsed, she had already lost the ability to escape from it herself. Judging from her condition, it would be difficult for her to regain her senses. However, Catkin could transform into cats. After removing the collar, Floria watched her for a moment and exhaled the scent of her manifestation. That scent returned the maid to her original form. Floria said, go wherever you wish to go. The little cat seemed grateful. It rubbed against her leg, then quickly ran away. Floria watched its retreating back and thought, although she can only live as a cat for the rest of her life, I hope she can be free and without worries. Then Floria said, let's go too. Seeing this, Virus sulked. I am upset. She patted his head to appease him. Is he jealous because I showed concern for the Catkin? We're almost there, she said. The deeper they went, the more they smelled the familiar scent of the sea and heard water splashing. At night, the moon silently shone over the deep blue artificial lake. A long stretch of clear water lay before them. A handsome man with lightly curled, aquamarine hair rose from the water. Have you come to visit me? It was the merman Atli. Upon seeing Floria, he swam closer. You came to see me? I'm very happy. Floria coolly replied. It seems you're no longer hungry. His blue eyes, the same color as his hair, stared at her. That's right, but the pearls you gave me are still the most delicious. He glanced at the glowing pearl she wore. Floria said, I was worried you would be hungry, so I brought this. Standing beside her, Virus picked up a stone and snapped. What are you saying to Rhea? Fish. Knowing that Virus could not understand him, Floria said, Virus, why are you being naughty again? Hurry and set up the mana stones. Her words shocked the boy. I'm being naughty. He pouted angrily. Ria, you're favoring that fish. Floria soothed him. Yes, yes. When we get home, we can sleep hugging each other. He immediately brightened. Okay, hurry up and move aside, Atli said impatiently. I don't care about some little wolf. Floria looked at the merman scales. Your wound still can't heal. He gave her a bewitching smile. As long as I return to the sea, it will heal. I just don't know whether I can still return. Floria was angry, though she tried not to show it. Atli continued, I know this was your family's decision. I don't blame you. That woman who calls herself my master comes here every day and never stops talking nonsense. I heard everything. I'm one of your experimental subjects, too. Floria was startled by his words. Atli knew perfectly well what she and Virus intended to do. Then why was he speaking so calmly? Why was he not resisting? She wanted to voice all her doubts, but the words would not leave her mouth. My kindness is nothing more than crocodile tears. No, it is false, hypocritical kindness. Thinking this, she could only lower her head and cry, tears rolling down Floria's cheeks. Then Virus's voice came from behind her. Ria, I've finished preparing everything. You could go now. Hearing this, she replied, all right, and walked toward the boy. Mermen could not remain out of water for long. To ensure Atli would not die during transport, they decided to use mana stones. As soon as the magic array activated, Atli's entire body floated into the air. Looking down curiously, he asked, I see. You even know how to use magic. Floria looked up and explained, the mana stones will ensure that seawater continues to surround you. It should make you feel a little better during the journey. Suddenly, Atli's fishtail transformed into a pair of legs. She was shocked. His legs. His appearance was like that of a mysterious creature from the deep sea. Does his tail turn into legs whenever he leaves the water? Virus urged her from beside them. Ria, hurry up. It'll be dawn soon. Once that happens, we won't be able to use shadows to hide ourselves. He quickly wrapped Atli in a blanket. Floria nodded slightly. Let's hurry and leave this place. The three of them arrived at the gate and climbed into the carriage. Virus took the driver's seat, grabbed the reins, and turned to ask, Ria, that fish isn't going to do anything strange to you, is he? Floria answered helplessly. No, he can't do anything at all, so don't worry. In any case, one of us has to drive the carriage. At her words, Virus glanced at her. Then it can only be me. I'll drive fast. I want to get home quickly and play with you, Ria. Floria opened the carriage door, climbed in, and smiled. Drive carefully. The carriage rattled onward down the road. The two people inside the carriage silently watched each other. After observing Atli for a long while, Floria assessed the situation. He did not resist at all. He simply let us take him away. But once he enters the ducal estate, I won't be able to protect him anymore. Unlike Cutter, who still has the title of prince, Atli will definitely be used as an experimental subject. She lowered her head. By then, he will surely hate me. As if he had sensed Floria's thoughts, he spoke. It would be nice if I could carry you away in my arms. Her eyes widened in shock as she looked at him. Atli continued, you don't need to look so guilty. In any case, I do not have much longer to live. Hearing that, she was even more surprised. Why do you say that? Seeing that she did not understand, Atli explained, the farther a merman is from the sea, the shorter his lifespan becomes. And I am injured as well. Floria finally understood. So that's it. A merman in an artificial lake cannot receive the sea's blessing. He cannot survive in an artificial imitation of his natural environment. So that's why you willingly came with us? She asked. Atli laughed. I wanted to see you more. He slowly moved closer and entwined his fingers with hers. Leaning against Floria, he asked, would you be willing to take me in? Flustered by Atli's words, she thought, what does he mean? Is he asking me to hide him? Even if I were willing, he would not be able to survive on land. We are far too far from the sea. And of course, I do not want to bring him back to the manor. Seeing that she remained silent, Atli spoke first. You don't need to think too much. I'll be fine. He gently stroked Floria's hair. Not only you, I'm the same. Persuaded by him, she asked then, what should I do? Atli smiled, placed a hand against his chest, and made a suggestion. Let us make a contract between us. Floria listened curiously. It seemed he knew about the transaction contract she had made with Cutter. Atli tightened his grip around her hand. He asked softly, would you be willing to make a contract with me? Floria's eyes became hazy, as though the merman had enchanted her. She suddenly blurted out, I agree. Without hesitation, Atli knelt down. The subject of my contract is Floria, the fresh flower of the land. Then he leaned close to her face and inhaled the scent of Floria's hair. Startled by his intimate action, she gasped. Atli then slowly moved closer to her hand, opened his mouth, and blew a pearl into it. At that moment, the sound of crashing waves echoed all around them. Floria was dazed by the blinding light. A merman's tears are the tears of the sea god. As children of the sea god, they can see the past and the future. Is that truly what they say? Atli leaned back and merged into a stream of blue light. Everything will be as you wish. His body gradually began to fade away. Seeing this, Floria hurriedly reached for his hand. Wait! Atli looked at her without saying anything. He only uttered 4 words, beautiful flower, before vanishing into the pearl in her hand. He disappeared. He hid inside the pearl. What on earth happened? Just then, the carriage arrived at the gates of the ducal estate. Rika frowned at the scene before him, his eyes revealing his dissatisfaction with Floria. Meanwhile, Virus was like an enraged little cat, bristling as he stood protectively in front of Floria to shield her from Rika. His eyes were fierce, and it almost seemed as though the boy were growling. Still draped in her cloak, Floria stood silently behind them, her face filled with confusion and guilt. After a long while, she finally managed to speak. I am sorry. It's all my fault. In truth, Floria had a secret of her own, but she did not know how to bring it up. More than anything, she was afraid no one would believe her. After returning to the ducal estate, Virus opened the carriage door and discovered that only she was left inside. She simply had no way to tell Virus and Rika the truth, that the merman had hidden himself inside her pearl earring. Even she herself could barely believe it, so how could she possibly say it aloud? Virus was so worried that he practically jumped up, anxiously thumping his chest as he hurriedly defended her. No, it wasn't her fault. I was driving the carriage. It's my fault, right? I drove too slowly and let the merman fall into the river. Floria was deeply moved, but the fault was hers. She could not let someone else take the blame for her, so she resolutely accepted all responsibility. She obediently lowered her head and apologized to Rika. It was all my fault. When you report this to father, please mention only my name. Before admitting her fault, Floria had thought it through carefully. Losing such a rare specimen would surely earn her father's severe punishment, but at least Atli would not be condemned to a living hell. Rika watched the two of them, one older and one younger, for a long time. His gaze shifted as though he were considering something before he finally spoke. Father will not learn about the merman. Floria abruptly raised her head, though she still felt uneasy. Rika no longer looked at them. Turning away and folding his arms across his chest, he said, For the past 2 days, you and Virus have been out conducting an inspection. Floria's heart stirred. Was Rika planning to cover up her mistake? As she looked at his retreating back, she was about to say something when Rika cut her off. I will tell the butler the same thing. You may leave now. Unable to remain any longer, the two of them quietly left the room together, remembering to close the door behind them. Out in the corridor, Virus could no longer hold back his curiosity and concern. Sister, what exactly happened? That bird isn't here right now, so you can tell me. Seeing his adorable pale face, Floria gave a strained smile and gently stroked his gleaming platinum hair. I really don't know. The merman simply vanished right before my eyes. Since she had said that, Virus did not know what else to say. Only his violet eyes remained full of worry. Seeing how anxious he was, Floria could only suggest, let's go back first. I am sleepy. Virus obediently nodded. Let's go. As they walked down the mansion corridor, Floria's mind was elsewhere. She could think only of how unbelievable it was that Atli had hidden inside a pearl, and that the task Rika had assigned her had not even been father's order. What a headache-inducing morning. Outside, the sky remained clear, and gentle sunlight sparkled brightly. Inside the magnificent imperial palace, a man sat sternly upon his throne with one leg crossed over the other. His cold gaze swept over the people kneeling with their heads bowed below him. The 17th emperor of the great Poland Empire, Emperor Lee Sachs, asked without preamble, "How is that thing?" Those below understood exactly what he meant. Count Isid carefully reported, ever since the eldest son of the Belen family left, its condition has remained stable. This subordinate believes there will be no problems on that day. Emperor Lee Sachs appeared quite pleased, curling his lips into a faint smile as a calculating glint flashed in his eyes. That thing was the unicorn obtained through a deal with the Belen family. It was now being properly raised and protected in the inner palace. It was a snow-white unicorn, beautiful from head to toe. Above all, it seemed to radiate the purest energy, enough to make anyone want to claim it for themselves. Although he was already confident, Emperor Lee Sax still gave a careful order. Raise it properly until the day of the gods. Count Isid respectfully replied, "Yes, your majesty." A trace of relief appeared on his aged, cunning face as he muttered, "Trading away that disgrace of the imperial family for a unicorn was truly a profitable deal. Fortunately, I did not kill it back then." Then he began recalling the past. At the time, the first monster Queen Lydia had given birth to, the disgrace of the imperial family, was a black leopard cub, still wrapped in swaddling clothes. Its eyes had not yet opened, and it could only make weak little growls. Lydia brought that black leopard cub before me and stubbornly claimed it was my child. She did not spare a thought for me. Even when I pretended that thing was dead, she kept muttering that it was still alive. With tears and mucus covering her face, Queen Lydia had thrown herself before Emperor Lee Sax and desperately pleaded with him. In return, she received only his contemptuous and terrified gaze. At that moment, he felt as if he were about to vomit, but he forced himself to endure it. My child? Just thinking about it disgusts me. Could the thing she gave birth to even be called human? In the end, he snatched it from Lydia's hands and imprisoned it in the dungeon beneath the inner palace. Then he fabricated evidence and swiftly stripped Lydia of her position as queen. After locking Lydia in the tower, I married a second queen. Fortunately, she gave me a healthy son. The boy was born only a year after that monster, and he grew up in good health. He had now become the crown prince of the empire. If that old disgrace could remain hidden, then everything would proceed smoothly. At that thought, his eyes gleamed as though he were plotting something. The old emperor immediately called out, "Duke Edward." Duke Edward, who was kneeling below, was slightly startled but quickly replied, "Yes, your majesty." Emperor Lee Sax asked in an even tone, "You were the one who recommended that merchant group supplying materials to the imperial family, weren't you?" Duke Edward was inwardly shocked, and fear appeared faintly on his face as he quietly answered, "Yes, your majesty." Emperor Lee Sax was an old fox. He was merely testing him, and Duke Edward had fallen right into the trap. "I heard they smuggled magical drugs into the empire." Duke Edward could only stammer, "I was afraid." The old emperor seemed provoked. His golden eyes flashed like those of a venomous snake, and his voice turned icy. "They presented you with a merman, so you recommended them to the imperial family? I never expected them to repay you in this way." With that, he casually raised one hand, ignoring Duke Edward's horrified gaze. A miserable scream instantly echoed throughout the room, making everyone tremble. It was as though something immensely heavy had pressed down on Duke Edward's entire body, leaving him unable to rise. Emperor Lee Sax could control gravity. His power could crush a person's internal organs. As Duke Edward trembled and struggled to support himself, those kneeling behind him had long since gone pale. Yet not a single person dared to speak. Only then did Emperor Lee Sax slowly lift his hand. His gaze remained chilling as he warned, "I will spare you this time. Deal with it quickly and properly." Having just survived the threshold of death, Duke Edward's face was white as paper. Trembling, he struggled to sit up. Cough. "Yes, your majesty. Thank you, your majesty, for sparing my life." Emperor Lee Sax looked around before tiredly waving his hand, dismissing everyone. Once the doors closed, he let out an exhausted sigh and rested his chin on his hand. He felt that things were gradually starting to deviate from his plans. This time, there would likely be trouble. The imperial family had earned its support because of this unique power. Even without mana stones, the imperial bloodline could control nature. Thus, their bloodline was revered as the bloodline of the gods. But that was not the truth. The truth was that their power originated from magical beasts, passed down through generations in their blood. The emperor himself also possessed magical beast blood, except several days later, the sky was still clear. Warm sunlight playfully slipped through the gaps and shone over the lush green lawn. The treetops swayed gently in the breeze, while the flower garden became even more splendid as countless blossoms competed in beauty. Yet despite the picturesque scenery, the situation at the ducal estate was far from peaceful. After the merman disappeared, the outside world fell into chaos. When Sirona discovered that her merman was gone, she flew into a rage. But that was only a minor matter. The merchant group that Duke Edward had once protected vanished completely overnight, drawing even more attention. Driven by greed for power, the merchant group had embezzled taxes. As a result, every member was convicted of treason, and their bodies were hung from the city gates for public display. The emperor's power had weakened with every generation, as had the power of the magical beasts. It was said that emperors of several generations ago could summon great floods or burn an entire city to ashes. Thinking of everything that had happened and was still happening, the rumors spreading among the common people made Emperor Lee Sax somewhat uneasy. He gripped the armrest of his throne, frowning as he used every ounce of his ability to devise his next plan. He absolutely could not lose the power of the throne, no matter when imperial authority was the most supreme power. The day of the gods was approaching. When it came, he would present the unicorn before the people and declare that it was the power of the gods, reinforcing the rule of the imperial family. And that monster would probably die in the Boleyn family's experiment. Then the imperial family would be perfect. The imperial family was the pinnacle of authority. At that moment, Floria was sitting in the greenhouse, playing with her long pink hair flowing behind her. She looked like a fairy lost amid a sea of flowers, though her expression seemed somewhat gloomy. Come to think of it, Father was still at the magic tower and had not returned. She did not know what had happened, but it seemed that place had completely tied him down, and that was not the only unusual thing. As she thought, Floria gently caressed an unopened flower bud and sent a little of her energy into it. Suddenly, the flower bloomed brilliantly, revealing all of its beauty for everyone to admire. Its fragrance drifted through the air along with its radiant splendor. Sitting among clusters of colorful flowers, Floria reflected. When she had first met Cutter, he had looked as though he wanted to kill his opponent immediately. Yet after that, he had said nothing. Rika's image appeared in her mind. He had concealed the merman's disappearance because of her, which was also very strange. No, it had not even been Father's order. Rika had arranged for her to do this himself. That was even stranger. Floria thought of Atli as well. Atli had somehow hidden himself inside a pearl. She raised her hand and touched her earrings. Ever since that day, she had been unable to remove the pearl earrings, no matter how hard she tried. Floria lowered her head and murmured, "When did all these strange things begin?" From afar, someone called, "Floria, Floria." Floria stood up and spoke to Virus, who was behind her. "Virus, don't go into the flower garden, all right?" She thought to herself that once Virus got excited, her poor flowers would be finished. At that moment, Virus's face was streaked with tears. Virus held a piece of paper in his hand, tears still falling as he called to Floria. "Sister, sister." Seeing him like that, Floria asked, "What happened?" Virus ran toward her. Floria lowered her gaze and noticed the paper in Virus's hand. It was a letter bearing the royal seal. Virus held it up for her to see. "Floria, it says you're getting married. That can't be true, can it?" Holding the letter, Floria thought, "This is the marriage approval document issued to me by the imperial family." Virus continued asking, "Was it sent to the wrong place?" Hearing that, Floria thought that she had expected to be able to hide it from him for a while longer. Floria crouched down so that she was at Virus's eye level. "It wasn't sent to the wrong place. The letter is for me." Upon hearing her answer, Virus cried out, "Sister." His face was full of pain and anger, but Floria continued, "Virus, one day, I will have to get married. When that happens, I'll have to leave here forever." Virus clenched his fists and shouted, "You don't have to get married. Don't leave me." Floria looked at Virus and said, "It is precisely so that I won't have to leave that I chose to get married. As long as I have proof that I'm married, I can stay here forever." Virus wiped his tears and asked, "What do you mean?" Still crouching there, Floria explained, "My spouse is on the other side of the ocean." Virus immediately shouted, "Then I'll go over there and kill him." Hearing that, Floria thought, "Is that what he's planning?" She gently stroked Virus's cheek. "Now listen to me. It's only a marriage on paper." Then Floria looked at the letter. "As long as I have this, Virus, you and I can be together forever, and I won't have to marry anyone else." Hearing that, Virus lowered his gaze to the letter. In an instant, he brightened. Really? Floria thought that she had completely hidden Cutter's existence, and guilt filled her heart. Virus asked eagerly, "So you did this to stay by my side?" Floria looked back at him. "Is there any other reason?" The two siblings stood in the flower garden as Floria continued. "I don't want to leave you, Virus. You feel the same way, don't you?" Virus replied, looking up at Floria, "But I still don't want anyone to take the place of your husband." Floria said, I know. Floria stood up, but Virus continued beneath her. "Sister, don't leave me. You'll always stay here, right?" Floria closed her eyes and answered, That's right." The two walked away hand in hand. Floria made a promise to herself. She would definitely take her beloved, along with everyone she loved, and escape from this castle. Floria continued thinking that with this letter, along with documents from the great families, her marriage was practically set in stone. Floria tightly held the letter as she walked through the forest. By tomorrow, the news would likely spread throughout the capital. Her footsteps made soft thudding sounds as she thought, should I go see Cutter? Floria arrived before a cave with something purple attached near its entrance. After what happened with Atlee, she did not know why, but she suddenly felt reluctant to see Cutter. As she walked deeper into the cave, descending step by step, she thought, at the very least, I have to tell him how things are progressing. Suddenly, a low growl sounded. Floria looked up and discovered Cutter inside, his golden eyes fixed on her. Not only that, but there was a chain around his neck. Floria hesitantly said, I'm here. Yet she could not help thinking, what is wrong with him? Is he angry because I haven't come for several days? Cutter stared at Floria, thinking, is that all you came to say? Meanwhile, Floria thought that he seemed full of resentment. From inside, Cutter spoke to her. Come close. Floria opened the iron gate, enclosing Cutter, and stepped inside. Standing across from him, she thought, why does he seem so upset today? Was he upset before too? Cutter looked at the letter in Floria's hand and asked, what is that? Floria replied, oh. She held the letter out before him, turning her face away as she said, it is the royal approval for our marriage. I thought it would be better if you knew. After speaking, Floria fell silent. Seeing that he did not respond, she glanced at Cutter and continued, holding the envelope. Aren't you going to read it? Instead of taking the letter, Cutter pulled Floria directly into his arms. The letter fell to the ground. Floria asked, what are you doing? Cutter still held her hand tightly. Looking into Floria's eyes, he said, we've truly become husband and wife now. Floria's face flushed bright red at his words. W what? Cutter leaned close to her ear and sweetly whispered, my wife. Floria blushed even harder at Cutter's words. Then Cutter's gaze suddenly sharpened as he looked at the earring on one side of her ear. He gently stroked Floria's pearl earring. Startled, Floria looked at him as Cutter, with that same expression, asked, Floria, why did you let this thing attach itself to you? Floria looked toward her ear as well. This? She raised a hand and answered Cutter, it's just a pearl earring. Floria thought to herself, there's no way he could know about Atlee. Even Virus didn't sense anything when he accompanied me on the mission. Floria looked at Cutter and continued thinking, how could he possibly know? Cutter bit his lips slightly after hearing her answer. Then he embraced Floria. She cried out, hey! Floria fell onto the bed, and Cutter pinned her beneath him. With a fierce expression, Cutter stared at the thing from the sea. Propping himself up above her with one hand on the bed, he said, that thing really knows how to cause trouble. Lying beneath him, Floria thought, the thing from the sea. Cutter must know very well about everything I've encountered recently. Feeling a little uneasy, she asked, how do you know? Cutter smiled. Of course I would investigate thoroughly if something happened to my person. Floria thought, how'd he find out? Through an animal's instincts? Or does the pearl emit the aura of the sea? As Cutter continued caressing her, she thought, and what does he mean by calling me his person? Cutter continued rubbing the pearl earring. Angrily, he said, and it can't even be taken off. Cutter asked Floria, are you planning to wear this thing forever? Floria recalled trying to remove the earring before. She thought, I've actually tried many methods, but none of them worked. Cutter suddenly laughed. It seems we can only cut off the flesh. Floria cried out, what did you say? Cutter continued, you're surprisingly lenient toward other men. Cutter lifted his hand away from Floria. Sitting upright, he said, how could I simply turn a blind eye? Cutter looked down at Floria. I've been waiting for you to come see me these past few days. Cutter's eyes glimmered. Be good and listen to me. Looking at him, Floria thought, so he was angry. Yet she felt a little tense. Has Cutter been waiting all this time for me to visit him? Floria gradually furrowed her brow. She continued thinking, just waiting for me to come here. Cutter stroked the edge of Floria's ear and said, but if I cut it off, it will definitely hurt. Hearing this, Floria thought, he isn't really planning to cut off my flesh, is he? Cutter continued looking at her. Suddenly, a wicked gleam appeared on Cutter's face. But if it can make you cry for me, that wouldn't be such a bad thing. Floria, lying beneath him, was shocked. What did you say? Cutter said, don't worry, I was only thinking about it. He leaned close to Floria, one arm stroking her hair. A rose with thorns. I wonder how beautiful that would be. Floria clenched her teeth slightly and thought, I feel like he's about to devour me whole. Then she looked at Cutter and continued thinking, it feels like he wants to swallow me in a single bite. Floria clenched her hands and reassured herself. No, Floria, pull yourself together. In the novel, Cutter relentlessly pursued the heroine, but he had never shown such a cruel expression. Suddenly, Floria spoke. Get off. Cutter was slightly surprised by her words. Floria continued looking at him. Get off me, Cutter. Cutter was not used to seeing Floria like this. His leg shifted slightly, and he got up, moving his leg away from her. Cutter slowly placed his feet on the floor. Floria looked at Cutter in silence. As Cutter stood there, Floria said, I made you wait for so long. She reached out. I'm sorry. Floria gently stroked Cutter's arm, and his face reddened at her action. Then Floria stretched both arms around Cutter's back and said, since you listened so obediently, I'll reward you. With that, she hugged Cutter tightly. Floria gently stroked his back. Cutter remained silent. Suddenly, Floria covered her own mouth in surprise. Cutter was licking one side of Floria's neck. Floria struggled slightly. Wait a moment. Cutter still held her tightly. Floria's face flushed faintly. Cutter continued biting her neck before licking the spot again. Floria cried out softly. Finally, Cutter bit Floria once more. She gasped in surprise. Cutter stopped, breathing heavily. He stood up, his hand still resting on Floria's body. A red bite mark had appeared on one side of Floria's neck. Cutter stared at it with a low hum. The two remained close together, their breaths mingling. Suddenly, Floria spoke. Not now. She reached up and stroked Cutter's head. You're terrible. She continued stroking the blushing Cutter's head. Then Floria picked up the envelope from below. We can only do it after the wedding. We still haven't officially registered our marriage. Holding the envelope, Floria continued, but things will surely progress much faster than they do for other families. Floria thought, the emperor will certainly be very interested in hearing about my marriage. Floria lowered her gaze, especially since he believes I will be married off to the seventh prince of another country across the sea. Floria closed her eyes. That way, the magical studies faction will not continue to grow stronger because of my wedding. She spoke so. Floria placed a finger over Cutter's lips. Only then, all right. Cutter leaned against her shoulder, seemingly on the verge of going mad. Floria smiled. You'll agree to it, won't you? Suddenly, Cutter moved away from Floria. Startled, she turned to look at him. Cutter stood in front of Floria, while she still did not understand what was happening. Footsteps sounded from outside, followed by an angry voice. You fraud! Floria hid behind Cutter and looked ahead. Virus was walking toward them with an enraged expression. Floria stammered, Be brother Virus.